Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast is if it's your first time to create an ecosystem of academic excellence. And through this inspiring conversation that we're going to have today, through the practical strategies that I know our guests will share, and through the actionable insights, we want to be able to foster trust and collaboration amongst teams, amongst leaders, amongst educators and change makers, just like yourself. So let's get into today's episode. Today, we are diving into the future of leadership, community, and youth empowerment. And this amazing woman that we're bringing on today was a trailblazing student, a branding expert, and advocate for social change and impact. And if you've ever wondered how to move young people from awareness to action, build brave spaces, and create a culture where the next generation can thrive, this conversation is for you. And this conversation you cannot mix. Brandi, how are you, lady? It's good to see you.
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am amazing. Look, I have known you for almost 5 years. That is crazy. And when we connected the other day, like I was talking to you offline, I was like, I remember her, but I can't put my finger on where I know her from. So it's so good to see you. I would love for you to be able to just introduce yourself to the audience without using any titles or accolades.
Okay, I have this. Are you ready? Without any titles or accolades. Okay. So my name is Brandi Barron. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am a friend. I am a neighbor. I am a voice. Yes, I'm a voice, and I am a mirror. I think when people look at me, they can sometimes see themselves within me. And so those were the words that I would use. Did I do good?
Now, you did great. And I think it's interesting the different people that I bring on and the different responses that they give. And it's so hard for people to not use titles. Yeah. So I appreciate how fluidly you communicated that. And I want to highlight two of the words that you said. You said voice and you said mirror. Yes. And one of the quotes that we always say, and it's on the screen, is the energy you bring is the culture you create. I want you to talk about what you mean by your voice, and then also expound upon what you mean by you're a mirror.
Yes. So when I say I'm a voice, I often find I have to be the disruptor, or I have to be the person that, not that I would want to, but just out of default or just because no one else is going to say it, someone has to be that person to translate. So I often find that I am the medium. I am the person that is translating what this community wants to say in order for it to hear the ears of the other community, right? And I'm able to permeate those barriers that they often, would find themselves, stuck at. And so for me, being a voice is just always listening first, and then understanding how I can communicate that so that it's effective for the listener or the audience that needs, to receive the message. So I would say I'm a voice in that aspect. Oftentimes I find myself bridging the gap between the youth and whatever generation I'm speaking to. And I find that that's great only because I was raised by my mother, but she's somewhat old school. And then often I was left with my great grands. And so I can just relate to the older generations. And I actually love to sit among them all the time. You learn a lot when you sit with them. But I also like to be among my community, my people. I'm only 23. So I like to be, with them, around them. But just being able to just bridge the gap between what the youth need, what the young adults need, and then how we can communicate that to those, generations above us.
Why do you think, for somebody listening, I really resonate with that? And I think being in leadership, you recognize the challenges once you enter into certain spaces with multiple generations, with the boomers, and I don't even know the letter, Gen XA, I don't even know at this point. And there's so many various generations. There's so many, a variety or a diverse sense of perspectives and innovations and how we even live and do things. Why do you think it's important, Brandi, to integrate the various generations collectively together?
I think if you're looking at it generationally, you have to look at it through the lens of also just nationality wise or just race wise, because all of that, not necessarily division, but all the diversity just stems down to your personal experience in this world. And so it's often about the environment that was kind of created during your time. And so if you sit around with the boomers, they'll talk to you about the history that they experienced. If you sit down with the millennials, that's my mom's generation, they'll tell you about, having survived 9/11 because my mother was pregnant with me with 9/11 or just the recession. And then you come to me, to the Gen Z, and I'm class of 2020. So not only was my mom pregnant with me during 9/11 and the recession had to endure that, but when it's my time to graduate, now I don't have a graduation walk across the stage, all because of COVID. Wow. And so you think about these kind of things, and every generation is kind of grieving certain things and just having to endure certain sufferings based on whatever environment, experiences they're having. And then it's all about empathy. How can you empathize with the next generation and then able to understand what's they're experiencing and what their trauma or what their response is so that it translates with you. So I think that's kind of where the diversity comes in and why you need to kind of integrate it all, because we all have experiences that we can feed off of, each one teach one. And so if you sit down and listen and you just kind of just grab onto the nuggets that other community can share with you, you're able to apply it to your own experiences and be able to take it to kind of feed whatever community that, you have. So, yeah.
Brandi, I really appreciate that perspective. And one of the things that I value most is the level of introspection that you've had, and you recognize how all of the experiences that you've had in your life have shaped your perspective, but also the importance of how you show up day to day, not just as a professional, right, but as an individual.
Right.
Can you talk to me about the slingshot moment that has led to you becoming this woman that you are today? And what I mean about slingshot, how I view slingshots is that there's certain aspects and experiences in our life where it pulled us back. Right. And the further that we had to pull back, we were able to really project forward into the being, into the professional, into the leader that we are today. What was that moment for you?
I would say for me, I would say graduating during COVID. I don't want to say that it was premature, neither do I want to say that it was late. So I'm going to say that had to be the right spot. So I came to Charlotte in 2017. That was my sophomore year of high school. And when I moved here, I left behind, well, I didn't leave them behind, but I had to separate from, 15 years, 16 years plus of relationships, of friendships. Yeah. I traveled through the Birmingham City School District. That's where I'm kind of migrated through. And so my thing is I had the same class of 200 people. And so I knew 200 people. I had a core within that 200, but I knew them by name. To this day, I can still call out by name. Wow. And so when I got here, I was not necessarily confused, but understanding that I would have to rebuild, I would have to rebrand. And that's a lot to kind of digest and sit with at the age of 16, because you were on top of it at your former school district, and now you have to come here when no one knows your name. And it was a culture shock, I guess I would say, because I attended Birmingham City School District, and down there, HBCU culture or just the community, you feel it all even within the high schools. Yeah. And so coming here, I graduated from Mallard Creek, and I love Creek. However, it was a culture shock, I tell you. I was placed in AP classes, so I'm already far in between, trying to figure out where do I belong. I also was having to take remedial courses while also taking advanced courses because of just the credits not transferring. So I was just lost. I was traveling in the wind by myself. But I had to kind of find community with joining sports, joining clubs. And then 2020 happens, and I have all these scholarships. I have all these college admissions. I have a lot in front of me and don't know exactly where I'm going, all because of COVID. And so for me, I took COVID very seriously. I wasn't prioritizing, let me go have a freshman year at college. So A&T, Central, love them dearly. I ended up not going to either one for other reasons as well. But I ended up staying home. And for once, it took me a while, but I used to grieve not being able to go to any of the big colleges and having to stay home. But my mother prioritized my health. And so I ended up going to Johnson C. Smith University right here in Charlotte, the only HBCU in Charlotte, which is great. And I say that because Charlotte is a city of opportunity. For me, I'm Alabama raised, but I'm Charlotte bred at this point. And it's kind of how I feel. And so being in Charlotte during college, during the I would say the recovery after COVID, it kind of just changed my perspective into for a lot of things, for a lot of reasons. It changed my career trajectory. At one point, I just knew I was going into sports and entertainment. I knew I was going to, do communications out there. I'm going to LA. I had it set. I had it made. I had goals and dreams. But life kind of steered me in other directions when I just started to open up, I guess, my heart, and also to make sure that my career was aligning with my purpose and my gifts. And so while I'm a great communicator, I felt that it was most useful to be able to bridge those gaps and also to be able to do it for a greater good and serve the public. So that's kind of what changed me.
I like that.
It was just a lot of grievances. And like you said, you feel like you're taking some steps back when really you're propelling into your future. And so while I felt that staying at home was like the worst thing possible because it was, 2020, 2021, I didn't have a freshman year. I stayed at home. Johnson C. Smith did not open their doors that year. And so while that's a tough decision, public institutions didn't have that privilege to just say so. Because they're public, they had to open their doors. Exactly. Being a private institution in a small HBCU, they had the decision that they had the choice to close the doors, prioritize health, have virtual classes. I think half of my class left because we stayed virtual. So I'm already going in with the smallest class in history, I would say, or at least since history. And then on top of that, you get there and then you kind of like have to find your way. And I only did 2 years on campus. So it was a lot of feeling like you were, behind schedule, but also I got out fast. So I was ahead of schedule. It was a lot going on.
Let me ask you this, Brandi. And one of the things that I love when people share their story is all of the touch points where there were moments where you learned something about yourself during the process, but it allowed you to grow into who you needed to be for the next touch point, and then the next touch point, and then the next touch point. There's somebody listening right now, either right now or they'll be watching or listening into the recording, that didn't have the mom that prioritized health, didn't have the foresight to be able to understand where and what they wanted to become. They're in a place right now as a young professional, and they have taken a job in maybe a new location, and they don't have that connection to those 200 people anymore. They don't know the names of all of their colleagues. They don't have friend groups and community like you mentioned earlier. What would be your advice to that young professional that wants to be able to create, wants to be able to be that disruptor, like you said earlier, but doesn't know the first steps to being able to find their way?
I can actually speak to that because that was me. So first year coming out, I think what I had to learn to do is just be comfortable with being uncomfortable and challenging yourself to get out and to see and explore outside of what you are used to. And so for me, that looked like exploring community groups. I went to visit Urban League Young Professionals Auxiliary. I am a part of UL, Urban League of the Central Carolinas. I'm a part of their Young Professional Auxiliary here. I guess I would say I've visited a couple events or meetings, general body meetings with them, but as well as the NAACP. Let me say that. But also just kind of not being afraid to speak when you go to different engagements, not being afraid to speak in different meetings, to find your voice. And once you're able to find your voice and you're able to kind of explore different communities, you're able to talk to people, you start to kind of feed your interest and you're able to kind of reveal or unveil what it is that you should, be moving towards, what direction you should go.
That's good. So anybody listening that missed that, I don't know what you were listening to, but you weren't listening. What she communicated is you first have to understand what you're interested in. Number two, you have to go find community organizations or groups that can feed that interest. And then you have to actually engage when you're there. But Brandi, one of the things that I've recognized that you have grown and you're an expert in is what we call personal branding. And there's somebody right now that may not have the capacity or the time to go to events. There may be somebody that wants to brand themselves and recreate themselves on social media or LinkedIn. What would be your step-by-step guide on how they can show up as a better brand on social media? And you can send me an invoice later.
No invoice needed. No invoice needed. I, consult for free. I would say there are two ways you can go about it. Some people, I think, in this life, especially just in this digital era, and if you're a digital native, if you're Gen Z or younger at this point, they're not afraid to curate the life they want others to think they have. And honestly, that's what personal branding is. Like, even if you not necessarily made it to the person that you want to become, you're able to fake it till you make it right now. You can curate your social media to be to communicate, to brand yourself the way that you envision your life to actually be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way. Secondly, I would say you can always scrape clean and start over. You just don't have to be afraid to start over. And I think that's something I am personally maybe about to do again. But just having the luxury of social media and being able to personal brand, the delete button, it exists. While we say it's going to remain on the internet, it will not be on your profile. You can, take the steps to start over, unplug for a while. Me personally, I fast often. If I feel myself becoming too, I guess, attached or too into my personal social media instead of all the ones that I manage, I will take a step back and I will unplug for a while. And then when you come back, it's almost like you came back a different person. And your audience, they will understand. They will grow with you. And if they do not, the follow button, it exists. So I think those are the two avenues that I would suggest when it comes to personal branding, but just making sure that on all fronts, you're showing up as authentically as you can, but then just being well-rounded and personable. There's no personal brand without being personable.
On the aspect of being personal, and this is, I guess, my personal question. What do you think makes a brand or a message truly resonate with an audience?
I think this goes back to the point of me saying being a mirror. It resonates with the audience if they can see themselves in you. So you have to live a real life. You have to go through real things for real people to connect with you. If you're telling me about a day-to-day that doesn't relate to me, then I'm not your audience. You need to go find, a different person, just reach out to different, target differently, change your community, change your circles. But in order for you to be personable, in order for your audience to relate to you, it's all about sharing experiences with them, whether they're physically, whether it's virtually, and then also just having experiences that they can identify with.
I think one of the things that has helped me a lot, and I had to delete my Instagram because I recognized that either my audience isn't there, or I just don't want to be there. I don't even know what it was. Instagram was a mess for me. But one thing that I realized that's helped me a lot on LinkedIn is sharing not only my wins on a day-to-day, but also being willing to share my losses.
Yeah.
And the challenges that I experienced, the pitfalls that or the various opportunities where I had to learn, I had to grow, I had to go back to that slingshot moment and become the person that I actually wanted to become. Yeah. I guess my question for you, though, is what challenges have you faced that has taught you the most about resilience, about leadership, about social impact that you lead today?
Yeah, I will say the challenges, and I love your piece about being transparent. I find that resonates the most. That's how you're able to be the most personable with people. But in sharing that, my challenges, I would say, as a young professional, one was first getting a job. Getting a job. Listen, you can do everything right in school, okay? I came out of school. I only did 2 semesters on campus, 1 virtual. So I did 3 years total. And in those 3 years, I had 5 internships. And out of those 5 internships, 1 became a full-time job that I worked for 1.5 years while juggling other internships during it, right? So coming out, I just knew, I was confident. I said, I'm going to get a job. Like, it's going to fall in my lap before I even walk the stage. Lo and behold, that was not the case. That was not the case. Despite the job market being saturated, having all these openings, job boards just overly, I don't know the word. Like there aren't words to explain what this market is. And I really do feel for just the next class to come, because I have no words for you right now. I really do not. We're all fighting a good fight out here. But I would say just trying to get a job. I left college, graduated, walked across the stage. Next day I was on a plane. Yes. And I was on a plane, and it was for an internship. Right. So this is me going on faith. I had to accept the internship, and I would say just you can never be too full of yourself, for lack of better terms. Never be too full of yourself, because for me, why am I accepting an internship? Right. This is my final internship. I told myself I'm not doing this again. Right. But I accepted an internship with the hopes of not necessarily joining their company, but being able to continue to add to my resume and show that I am doing something in the meantime.
That's good.
And so as long as you're able to show that, you have the grit, you have the work ethic, you're able to continue to just persevere, continue to just push on through the challenge and all those barriers, and not look at problems as if, it's holding you back with an opportunity. I think that was my biggest challenge, honestly, was trying to get a job. But 1 month later, I want to say I ended up getting a job. I did. And it came by way of relationship. Relationship is currency now. A professor, I never took her class in college, but I made sure I had relationships with her. She sent me something. She texted me and she said, "You should apply." And I did. And it turned out that the person who was hiring was also, she came only once, but came to a PRSSA event, which is a Public Relations Society of America for students. She came to our event one time at Johnson C. Smith, and one impression and then one good interview later, she offered me a job. And she said she wouldn't have done it because I'm a young young applicant, and that's often why we also struggle. But having that initial impression outside of the interview helped as well.
And I just want you to pause for a second, because that's a game changer. Like relationship currency, being able to exude excellence from your impression, and being able to not just exude it, but match it in an interview process where you're able to deliver at a high level. And even though they had a bias and a perspective in regards to them not hiring younger talent, they took a chance and they invested time, talent, and treasure into you, so that and it worked out. And I want somebody listening right now to, what are you exuding? Like, what does your brand communicate about you before you even walk into the room? What relationships have you established? Who's talking about you outside of the rooms that you go into positively? Yeah. What impact and ripples have you made? And we actually have a question that just came on. It's, how do you recommend balancing building a personal brand without sacrificing your sense of privacy / not having to share everything?
I would say identifying what is sacred to you, because that is what you'll know to protect the most. So for me, and it took me a while to get here, but I'm big on faith. I'm big on faith. I have a praying mother, I tell you. And I have an even greater praying grandfather, or had, as well as grandmothers. And so I think one for me was my faith. And I didn't want faith to be a fad. I didn't want it to be a trend. I didn't want to join conversations where I knew people in reality, but I could see how they project online. And so for me, it was identifying what was sacred, and that's family and faith. And then, so that lets me know what I'm going to protect the most and what I can't overshare too much, or I'm a stickler about how I share it, and be able to balance that with, everything else that I'm willing and openly sharing. Because not to say that I don't protect it as much, or don't care about it, but it's just, here you go. This is for free, but you have to pay for this. So that's really the lens that I look at it through. And then just making sure that I'm not compromising on my beliefs.
I appreciate what you said earlier, though. It's about being transparent while sacring your, identifying what's sacred to you, and you know, who are you? Like, don't just share all the great stuff and then all this crazy stuff you're doing, right? Outside of the camera, you're a completely different person. I saw a post the other day about a woman that took her kids to the beach to take pictures and film content, and literally right after she finished shooting the content, they left. And you hear stories like this all the time where you're only doing it for the gram, you're only doing it for the likes.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give someone about staying true to who they are, despite what everything else around them is communicating?
My thing is, if you're chasing the likes, just think about how overwhelmed you would feel if 500 people walked up to you and all said, "Oh my gosh, I like this. Oh my gosh, I like this. Oh my gosh, I love this. I like this." You would be so overwhelmed. So for me, it's almost, why do we care so much? Why do you care so much? Is it feeding, is it giving you validity that you didn't have internally? Like, why do we care so much? Yeah. That's the big question for me. And so once you're able to, find your, personal worth, just have, self-worth, I think that changes the conversation for individuals. But that's my take.
What does self-worth mean to you?
Self-worth is being able to be alone and not feel alone, being able to walk astride by myself and not have to compare. Self-worth is honestly me looking in the mirror and telling myself and being able to identify why I'm worthy without the echoes or without any, additional voices.
We're gonna go there. I'll be trying to keep it contagious culture, but we got to go there for everybody listening. It took me 3 decades to understand how to love myself. And I really resonate with that. I really resonate that from the perspective of, even in scripture, Joseph had to take off his coat before he received the blessing.
Right.
And I allowed the accolades and the titles and the cars and all of these different things to define me. But it wasn't until all of those things were taken that I started to realize who I really was and who he saw me as. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the most beautiful and most painful and the most expensive process that you go through.
It is.
But it's the most freeing process when you realize that he's walking next to you throughout that whole process.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was even going with that, but I just felt like I needed to share that.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
And just be honest and transparent, because I feel like too many times we show up as people that we're not for so many things that really don't even matter and aren't going to be there when we go through it. Mm-hmm. And hopefully somebody in this conversation understands that you are enough, that you are valuable, you are everything that you need to be. You are exactly where you need to be. You have exactly what you need. Yeah. You just got to believe it. I guess my question as we transition is, when did you start believing it? Like, when did you start recognizing in the power of your voice, in the power of your story, in the power of your impact?
I hate to say this because it almost contradicts my previous statement, but others had to tell me before I told myself or believed in myself. And I hate to say that because I just spoke about, not needing others, validation.
But I don't think it's not validation. I think when you hear it enough, you start to see you start to question, what do they see that I don't see? And it starts to get you on a process of seeing yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it was, I want to say around high school, but I would say I ran from my truth for a while. I'm gonna be so honest. I continue to run from my truth. Like law school, baby, I don't want to see it. But I know it's coming. It's in the future.
Yeah.
But I would say it started around high school. I ran from it. College, people kept putting me in positions I didn't ask for. So clearly they saw something in me that I did not want to open my eyes to. And then post college, they're still seeing things in me that I'm continuing to ask, why me? So I think as of last year, I'm starting to open my mind up more to just those titles. But oftentimes, and I would say I went through a process. And my frontal lobe isn't there yet. Like I told you guys, I'm only 23, right? It's not there yet. However, I would say I opened up, I transitioned, I came into this new year with a new process. I did something I haven't done before, and I'm so proud of myself for doing it. I'm going to share. I did a 90-day fast. And I mean 90 days strong fast. I'm trying to tell you, I had to get my flesh in check.
You said 9 days or 90?
90.
You said
90.
Golly.
90 days. Let me tell you how I did it, right? So my birthday is on March 30th. So technically that's not 90 days into the new year because February. So my smart behind, added 2 from 2024. So technically I started right after Christmas on the 27th. And so for me, 90 days of prayer and fasting, 90 days of reading my Bible consistently, 90 days of fasting from everything that I know, and if I were to let flesh take over, that I would just overly consume. So that was anything secular. I mean, I turned off everything. My Spotify this year's wrap is going to tell me I listen to all Christian, all gospel for the first 90 days. And so it allowed me to just be able to hear the voice of God clearer, but then also it allowed for me to kind of just accept who he's called me to be, accept the purpose and just the calling. And so, I would say that worked. It was a process. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of reliving it as I'm
one of the thoughts that I heard is like, what are you willing to sacrifice in order for you to become and be in the position that you need to be? Like, what are you willing to give up so that you can actually hear with clarity, so that you can get to the place? And whether you are a believer or not, whether you're a leader or not, whether you are in these high level spaces or not, everybody has to go through something. Everybody has to go through a process where they're getting rid of something. Mm-hmm. And you've went through this process so often. And I think that's what makes you really, really impressive when it comes to your youth impact and your social impact. Can you just, like, as we sidestep, like, what do you do on a daily basis? Like, what is your actual job? Like, I know it, but the world doesn't know it. And how did you even get into this work?
Yeah, so my actual job, 9 to 5. I am the director of communications. Oh, you think I can communicate? The director of communications for a nonprofit called The Relatives. The Relatives is it's overly 50 years, so almost 51, but 51-year organization that is here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We serve homeless, at-risk displaced youth and young adults in the city of Charlotte. So we serve in 2 capacities. We have multiple programs, but our 2 locations is a homeless shelter, the only one in Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, ages 7 to 17. And then also we have our resource center, which just serves ages 16 to 24. That's intensive and soft case management. And so this is about being purpose aligned. So this is, not a new field for me. I've done communications over a lot of different fields. I started off, like I said, I did 5 internships. So I've done politics. My first internship was in politics, election 2020 to be exact. That was a rough semester, I tell you, a rough semester. I worked under Angela Rye, former CNN commentator. I worked under her with her firm Impact Strategies. And she also, during that time, during the election season, had launched Angela Own One, or Own One with Angela Rye. So that was a lot. I tell you, that was a lot. But I knew I didn't necessarily want to go into politics at that moment, only because I just need to be able to go home at night and sleep. That's what I learned from that semester. So after that, I traded in politics for business. I went into franchising, which I'm going to loop back around to eventually. But franchising, and then from franchising, I did advertising agency. After that, I landed back in nonprofit, and I've always done, or I guess want to say, been adjacent to nonprofit, or kind of been in it only because I do a lot of volunteer work. So Hill Charlotte, which is how I know Cal here. Hill Charlotte is a nonprofit here in the city of Charlotte. And so through Hill Charlotte, we've worked with the youth. I started out as a junior camp counselor. I was helping tutor, I was helping chaperone, just being an advocate for the youth. And then got into housing, affordable housing. Okay, well, that I want to say came back up because my first job out of college was affordable housing. It was at Enlivian, which is formerly the Charlotte Housing Authority. So I was in affordable housing, yes. And then from there, I'm here now at the Relatives. And so housing is still a big conversation because I deal with homeless youth, at-risk youth, or just youth in crisis who parents and them do not see eye to eye, or just have behavioral or, any kind of crisis. So it kind of all just one big circle, my journey here.
Working with youth in this capacity takes a toll on a person.
It does.
What's your message to those that work in this field, that are called, that are disruptors, that are wanting to do more and show up, that have trouble bringing that type of stuff home with them too?
For me, what I could suggest is be selfish where you can. You give so much of yourself to your job because your job is not a job. Your job is actually service. And so for me, I always tell people, be selfish where you can. And as much as you can. I hate to say it that way, but as much as you can, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're not feeding yourself, how do you expect to feed others?
That's the truth.
So you have to be selfish where you can. If you need to sleep a little bit longer so that you wake up on the right foot, because all you're going to do is spiral, and now you have your clients spiraling, you have the kids spiraling, right? And they feed off energy. Children feed off of energy. If they don't feed off energy, they also, are some truth tellers, and they'll tell you to you straight. And so for me, if I'm going to step into a place that kids are, just so authentic, unapologetic, truth tellers, just, I have to make sure I'm coming as my best self, but then also understanding that you're dealing with impressionable people.
Of course.
And they're at their age where they're consuming and then they're going to regurgitate. And so
I feel like we learn so much more from kids than kids learn from us.
Oh, most definitely.
I really do. And I say that because I feel like even being a dad, I've learned, I feel like, more about myself and my journey and my triggers and where I need to grow from raising a child. And I often check myself where before I discipline or before I try to hold somebody accountable or before I try to teach a lesson, I have to ask myself first, like, am I doing that? And it's kind of going back to, well, or was I a mirror or a model to that type of behavior?
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice that you'd give to someone looking to make, I guess, a meaningful contribution or a meaningful impact in their community? You do a lot of volunteering and you have a service heart, but what would you advise someone to do that's wanting to do more in their community, but just don't know where to start?
I would say, are you asking me where to start? Where they should start?
Oh, yeah.
I would say, look at how you're budgeting your time, where you're spending, or where you're most frequent at. That'll tell you where to start. because you're already there. You're already implanted. You're already, there. You don't have to be, implant anywhere. You don't have to be moved. You don't have to find a new community to serve. Serve the one that you're already at. I guarantee you there's something missing.
That's good. I'm thinking about my own journey. I've always resonated with serving at church because it's like I already be here. Like I already be here. I already want to use the gift of teaching to be able to serve in the youth ministry. Or I think about education. Like I've always served in some type of capacity within the educational realm because that's where I'm called. That's where I'm comfortable. Brandi, you've given us so much heart and wisdom throughout our time on this episode. What's next for you? Like what's on the horizon in your career and social impact efforts?
Well, first, if I could finish grad school, if I could finish grad school, but I would say, when you said, where to start, for me, it's paying it back. And so I have to give credit to Johnson C. Smith for a lot of my success, and not necessarily that they had their hands in it, but that they gave me an environment to grow. They gave me an environment to practice. Like, I was able to find myself there, whether I needed, someone personally to do it for me or not. But I have to give it to Smith because they stationed me in Charlotte. And if it wasn't for Smith, I wouldn't have stayed in Charlotte. And so for me, that looks like paying it back to my, alma mater. I'm not the most visible alum, but I am for my age group. So I have been chosen and called out to be, this might be the first public time I'm saying this or sharing this. I am a presidential ambassador. And so what that looks like is, increasing my visibility. And they're using me to reach us young alum. So I will be, I guess what's next for me is just being that voice again. And then just communicating. And I'm just doing it in a different capacity in a different environment, but same things, just in a different place.
Let me ask you this. What is one piece of encouragement that you'd give to somebody? Like look at you 5-6 years ago. What is that piece of encouragement that you would give to that leader that needs to be able to prepare themselves to motivate and encourage and empower someone like you then to be able to get to the place where you are at now?
Oh, I'm trying to find the words. I know exactly what I want to say. I just need to find the words for it. There's a quote. There's also a lyric. They go hand in hand. Somebody said it first. But I'm just going to paraphrase. And it's, it's along the lines of a leader is only as good as, the leaders they make. And so if you need motivation, and this goes for a parent because technically you're the leader of your household, right? So, or for me, in my case, I'm a big sister. So when I look at my younger siblings, I'm the leader for them. And so I'm only as good as what I can create or what I can steward. And so that's all the motivation you need. Because if you have to continue to go far, you won't be able to go far if you have an anchor that can't come with you. I need a partner to walk alongside versus someone I'm just dragging. Children have to grow up, and your subordinates, I'm not necessarily subordinates, but your employees, they have to grow up, or the people who look to you, your mentees, they have to grow with you. And if their ceiling is you, then you've kind of failed. So yeah, I think that's all the motivation you need.
Of course. Brandi, how can people follow you, the work, contribute to your success as well?
Yes. So LinkedIn.com/n/Brandi, BRANDI, B Shine. And that is the same on Instagram, BrandyB.Shine. But yeah. And from there, it'll take you to all the different avenues you need to go. But that's how you can find me.
Brandi, I appreciate you. I really do.
I appreciate you.
I've known you since you were a junior camp counselor. It's kind of crazy to even say that. But I just thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing your insights and sharing your passion and your overall perspective and leadership and youth empowerment and social impact and branding and all of these various things that I believe give us the ability, give us the courage, give us the boldness to show up better, to build braver, stronger communities. To our listeners, remember that creating a contagious culture starts with each of us taking one step, one action, but it starts with belief and supporting the next generation, supporting a cause, showing up for our communities, and building something that is a braver space where people can grow and lead requires you to take action. It requires you to take action. It requires you to have faith. It requires you to have sacrifices, and it requires you to have clarity in where you were called to be. One of the questions that we always ask on the Contagious Culture podcast is, what type of culture are you creating? Remember, the energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.